Is this our Independence Day? Find out what I mean on this episode of Pushback.
Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Jonny, and this is another episode of Pushback. I'm so happy to have you here again joining with me. I'm a couple days late again. Sorry about that. We have been celebrating Independence Day and spending a lot of time with family, which has been wonderful. Quick story, we went to the Twins game on July 3rd and had a wonderful time. It was kind of a spontaneous decision. It was a beautiful day, and we decided to drive down and visit my parents. Hello, Mom and Dad, if you're listening. And then went to the Twins game, had a marvelous time. We lost, but it was a beautiful night. They did fireworks after the Twins game, which were high-end fireworks. It was amazing with the cityscape as the background. It was beautiful. Went to our car. We drove to a gas station to fill up with gas and get some snacks for the drive home, which was kind of late. I opened my wallet and it was completely cleaned out. And so I turned to Amy and I said, did you take all my credit cards? And she opened up her purse and it was completely cleaned out. So we had all of our credit cards stolen. Amy's ID was stolen. And so we've been spending the last couple days canceling all of our credit cards and getting new ones and setting things, reestablishing our financial access. So it was frustrating, and these things do happen in a fallen world, and I talked about being born into a battle. Certainly frustrating. However, not life-threatening, and everything is okay, but it's taking a little time to scramble to get all that put back together again. So no harm done, and we decided just to bless this person, whoever stole our stuff, and they went on a little bit of a shopping spree before we could get everything completely canceled, but that's all been taken care of. So we live and we learn, and we bless even those who are enemies, and that's what we decided to do. And so I want to talk about the word independence. We celebrated Independence Day. It was kind of an emotional Independence Day for us. For whatever reason, I think we shared with you before that we went on a grad trip with my son, went to Washington, D.C., went to Gettysburg, went to Yorktown. And interestingly, lately we've been watching a few movies that have been military related. We watched Pearl Harbor, which was a good movie, 3 hours long, but it was a good movie. All of this has kind of created this patriotic sense in us. And so when the fireworks started and the patriotic music began and God Bless America, it was interesting because all of us were a little emotional, and rightfully so. There's a lot to be thankful for. And this country that we're representing and demonstrating God's love to, and taking time to even do a podcast like this and time for you to listen and connect with the topics of our country just shows that we care so deeply about it. Greatest country that's ever existed, in my opinion. And it's been founded on principles of independence in a lot of ways. We have a Declaration of Independence. Obviously, that was a historical document created to separate us from the tyranny of the British rule. But there were also founding principles within the founding documents which showed us and gave us freedoms and rights as citizens. And I think maybe at no other time in history, certainly not in my lifetime, have those freedoms been in jeopardy, I believe. Now, I'm not trying to sound some horrible alarm. On the other hand, that's kind of what this podcast is about, is exposing, conversing, being able to dialogue about the things that concern us. And when the further we get away from the heart of the founding fathers and what they intended for our country, the further we remove ourselves from the responsibility of stewarding those things. It's our responsibility. And so when we talk about freedom of the press and freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and those are the founding principles of our country, as soon as those become in jeopardy, it ceases to be the country that we wanted it to be. When I say we, I mean the founding fathers, the visionaries, the ones who called the nation into being under God. When we remove God, when we remove the precepts of His love that is infused in the founding documents, we actually remove the very heartbeat of what our country is. And so it's important that we study, that we examine, that we read about what the founding fathers thought and what they considered to be the most important vital pieces of our democracy. And when we're starting to see lawfare and imprisonment and labeling and class warfare and accusations of bigotry and hate only because you disagree with me, these are problems. And when we have a press that conceals truth and only relays to the people what they want to have relayed, that's not freedom of the press. That's not free. It is in the fact that they have the right to release anything they want, but freedom, at the heart of freedom, is truth. The Bible says it's truth that will set you free. And so we need to understand that there's a direct connection of freedom with truth. And when we're not given truth, which I believe was demonstrated at the last debate, it should make us shudder. It should make us rise up. It should make us understand that there's other things going on here that we need to be privy to, that we need to understand. And so I want to dig into the word independence because it's a multifaceted word, and I believe it's a two-edged sword in a lot of ways. Independence is something that we hold very dear in this country. I remember one time Amy and I were traveling to the Netherlands, and we were speaking there, and this was during the end of the Obama administration, and Trump was running for president. So it was in that time period. And the Affordable Care Act was passed in the middle of the night by the Democrats in Congress. And Donald Trump, of course, opposed it. And we were talking to some people in the Netherlands who have a very strong socialistic bent. And they turned to us and they said, why would Donald Trump oppose everyone having health insurance? That was the question. And my response to them was, I don't think he opposes everyone having health insurance. He opposes everybody being forced to have health insurance. There's something American about having a choice, about realizing that it's a democracy and that if this isn't a good choice, that we should vote it down. And if there is a choice at all, we should have the ability to opt in or to opt out. That's what Americans tend to shudder when we're told that we have to do something mandated by the government. Enter conversation about the vaccine. And so I think they were okay with that answer, but it was interesting because they only saw the fact that health insurance for everyone is good and therefore everybody should be for it. But there are always nuances and there's always strings attached to the lesson. And of course, as a physician, I've been against the Affordable Care Act. I don't think it's been good for our country. And I think it's once again adding trillions of dollars to our debt. And nor has it made any real difference as far as quality of care. Different conversation for another day. But it speaks to the American heart and what we believe and what we value here. And so I believe that is good. And I believe the Declaration of Independence was a worthy fight. And I believe those were founding principles of our country. It's interesting, though, however, that it can lead to, and if we're not careful, what's called a spirit of independence. See, declarations are powerful, and they're meant to be, but we have a declaration of independence over our country. And it's interesting because God created us as relational people. That's in our DNA. We actually need each other. Studies have shown, like, if you are dropped into a desert island all by yourself, it doesn't take long before your mental functioning becomes affected and you literally go insane. Even if your physical needs are met, there is an emotional need for other people. And our body tends to shut down when we don't have it, even a little bit of it. Why is that true? It's because that's the way we're created. He loves the fact that we need each other and that we actually depend on each other. He talks and uses the analogy about the human body and how can the eye say the hand is worthless. See, we all need and work together. We all have different roles, and he's designed it that way in his kingdom that we would be relational people. And it's beautiful. And when we have a spirit of independence, it can turn into something that becomes, I don't need anyone. We call it the American spirit, interestingly. Self-made man, independently wealthy. I don't need anyone. No one can tell me what to do. It's my own stuff. It's my own ideas. And we have an independent spirit that can happen. So let's go back to the founding fathers and to their heart. What was their idea when they wrote a Declaration of Independence? This was written by John Hancock. He was the first signer of the Declaration of Independence. He said resistance to tyranny becomes the Christian and social duty of each individual. Continue steadfast and with a proper sense of your dependence on God, nobly defend those rights which heaven gave, and no man ought to take from us. That speaks volumes because he's talking about the warning. He gave a little warning in the middle of overcoming tyranny, in the middle of fighting for rights. In the middle of that is our dependence on God. It's how he created it to be. Do we live in a day of independence? I believe that independence is not a kingdom principle. In fact, I would submit to you that the word independence or the notion of independence is nowhere found in the Bible. I challenge you to find anywhere in the Bible where God tries to convince us to be independent. God helps those who help themselves is not in the Bible. People often say the good book says God helps those who help themselves. Nope, not scripture. That was spoken by Benjamin Franklin, interestingly. And I believe that there's been no greater devastating effect of this independent spirit than on our family relational activities. And most important, in marriage. See, we believe that we can become married and still be independent. We've been commissioned into marriage. We submit in submission in marriage to each other. And yet, the world is telling us that we can still operate in a self-mission. The self-mission is what actually destroys relational connectivity. Matthew 19:3-8, he answered and said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then, they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't poetry. This is an actual transformational change that takes place. It's the word echad, means one. It means unique. You actually become something completely unique. And what that is oneness. Where there is no me without you. That's what marriage actually means. And we try to redefine marriage as sort of a partnership, as a sort of a togetherness, as harmony is to melody. Two things that operate together. Two pieces of a puzzle that complete each other. That's not at all how he created it to be. He created us with full identity as individuals, and then he joins us in marriage and we become something else. We become something unique. We become the echad of God. And it's a beautiful transformational piece that takes place, and there's no room for independence. And you say, but don't we have our own visions, our own goals, our own dreams, our own aspirations? And the answer is no, not once you're married. You are one, you are inseparable. We have our own gifts, we have our own talents, we have our own callings, we have our own gender differences. All of those things can be separate and different, but they're not apart. They're always together in oneness. See, I believe wedding vows are actually a declaration of dependence. I'm not talking about weird codependency things where you can't eat, drink, sleep without permission from another person. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the notion of giving your heart to somebody and becoming dependent on them to operate in your mission. See, I believe this independent spirit creates disunity, it creates power struggles, and actually leads to divorce. Let me just tell it to you straight. I tend to do that in this podcast. That's what happens. But when we're together and we're inseparable, it creates a unity of purpose, and we work together towards things. If there are power struggles in your marriage, I would ask you to check your independent mindsets. Change the way that you think about marriage and what it's for. It's his culture of marriage. We need to learn it, what his culture is. The same is true, I believe, in parenting. I don't believe that our goal in parenting is to create strong, independent children. I hear it all the time. Parents say, well, our goal is just to create strong, independent children. Now, I get the notion that they need to learn how to fry an egg and fill their tank with gas and do their laundry. I get that you're creating them to be able to operate as adults in this world. But this notion of an independent child is actually countercultural to what the kingdom actually teaches us. See, when children are born, they're 100% dependent on their parents. Without them, they would die. If you think about a cute little 7-pound newborn, they fully need their parents. But as they grow and they mature, and even as they become teenagers, they could function outside of a home, and yet they still need the nurturing and connectivity of parents to help them in this world. That's why they are called dependents. We do that every year on our tax form. How many dependents do you have? They are dependent on you. And I believe that they don't ever really become 100% independent from a family culture. I believe family has been structured to actually be a safety net, to be a hedge of protection around each other, so that we continually move in the sense and the direction of family. I believe family is one of the most powerful words ever created. And it's not from an independent mindset, it's from a dependent mindset where we need each other. So I believe the goal in parenting is actually a transfer of dependence, not independence. Not when they're 18, we kick them out the door and say, you're on your own, you can do this. But the goal is the culture of dependency begins with our dependency on God. Just like John Hancock said, move with your understanding of dependence on the Father. And I believe that is the goal. That's where we should put all of our firepower of parenting, is our children hearing the Father's voice for themselves. So what I shared about marriage, we teach in our marriage course. What I teach about parenting, we teach in our parenting course. And these are just little snippets of information that you can connect to. I encourage you to find those on our website at gofam.org so that you can learn more, connect more with the truth of his kingdom. And we love to teach kingdom principles in family at gofam.org. It's to parent that identity piece where we are fully found and connected in Him as a father. And it's those places that I believe that our children can learn at a very, very young age. And we instruct and we guide and we direct them as they grow and as they mature into the ability to connect to the Father's heart. Not just be able to fry an egg and fill a gas tank. That's not the purpose of life. Purpose of life is to connect to Him, hear His voice, hear His calling, hear His wooing of love towards them, so that they can move with purpose and power and passion in their lives for the things that they are called to do and to be. So we teach parents have the unique responsibility to first display the Father's voice, then introduce them into the Father's voice, and then release them into the Father's voice. That's what it is. Show them what the Father's love looks like. That's where we start in parenting. Then train them to hear His voice, and then send them into the world as ambassadors to go and change the world. I've started this series on what I called killing our kids, how culture, if we're not careful, is actually targeting our children right now. And we need to have our minds and our eyes open to what is happening so that we are aware. And I talked about parents as the most powerful influencers that our children have. I talked about what we call pseudo-education or pseudoscience, and how the world is taking objective truth and understanding and twisting it all around to the point where it doesn't even make any sense anymore. And that science itself can't even be trusted. That we need to be knowledgeable enough as parents to direct and guide and to be able to discern what is being transmitted to our children. And now I'm switching into politics, which is so interesting because it's been on such the forefront as we're getting closer to this election and the recent debate and the things that have been happening. But we see how these influence our children. And so we need to be connected, and we need to understand our role as parents. And our role as parents is to steer them to be able to hear the Father's voice. Acts 22:14 says that you should know His will and see the just one and hear the voice of His mouth. Is that not what we want for all of our children? To hear the voice of His mouth. He is a perfect Father. He does it way better than I ever could. His words are always true and right and just and powerful and empowering. And I love Him so much, and I want my children to be connected to His voice every single day, so the things that they are doing is in the center of His will, and that they would know His will. They would see the just one, and they would hear the voice of His mouth. Oh Lord, I pray that for my kids. I pray that for my grandchildren, that they would hear the voice of His mouth. That's the dependency that His voice is like food and drink to us, that we would not be able to live without it. That's my cry for my heart, for my family. It's the cry of my heart for your family. And I release that truth, that presence, that power into you, into your marriage, into your parenting, into your children, and into your grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren, unto the generations. Father, you are so good. Your voice is so powerful. And we receive it. We put it in front of us as what always draws us and will always guide us is your voice and your voice only. We are dependent on you. And I'm also so thankful today of my dependency on my wife and my children and family, that we are, and friends, and we are drawn together to strengthen each other and to encourage each other. It's our role that we have on this earth, and I take it seriously. I take this podcast seriously, and I'm so grateful that you are willing to listen to me even a couple days late this week, because it's so important as we talk about and celebrate Independence Day, that the day that we live in, the time in which we live in, it's never been more important that we are dependent on Him and one another. Be blessed. I will come to you again here this next week and continue to move forward in our series. Love you so much. Now let's go together to set and shape the culture.